Back on Believe in Big Ten, Rhett Lewis, Tom Hannafin, still here with you. Our great pleasure now to welcome one of my good buddies covering all things college football and now college basketball. We get the great opportunity to check in with one of the foremost authorities on the sport here and does a great job covering college athletics for NBC. Nicole Auerbach is with us. Nicole, awesome to chat with you as always. We kind of began the CFP journey together, right? Up in the press box in South Bend with Notre Dame, getting a convincing and sometimes dominant win over Indiana. And, kind of from that moment forward, I know I felt a lot better about what Notre Dame was going to do moving forward. And I don't know if I had them going into the national title game, but here they sit getting ready for Ohio State. So let's set the scene that way then. From the moment you saw Notre Dame against Indiana, did this feel like a team that could ultimately end up where we're sitting right now, getting ready to play for football immortality?
Yeah, I believe so. I picked it in my bracket. I had them reaching the national championship game. I feel like with Notre Dame, people stop watching them after the Northern Illinois game, right? You tune in because you got the upset alert, and then people just stop watching them. Florida State wasn't a huge game. They played Army, they played Navy, but again, you're sort of like, well, it's a different style, it's a different level of competition. But that was one of the best and most dominant teams in the country the last 2.5 months of the regular season. So I wasn't terribly surprised that in a year where teams were really inconsistent week to week, that Notre Dame is here and that they were able to figure out ways to win games because they have an elite defense and they have a great run game, which includes their quarterback. But the questions about the pass game, like, hey, if they're down 14-0, can Riley Leonard throw their way back into a game? We still haven't seen it, right? We still haven't tested that out. And it may not be an issue if they're never down, right? Or they're never down some insurmountable amount. But that's where I think you got to give a lot of credit for, Steve Angeli coming in and that drive at the end of the first half against Penn State, I think was critical into just changing the game and flipping momentum. So yeah, I'm not terribly surprised that they're here. I think Marcus Freeman is one of the best coaches in the sport right now. And I think he has done a fantastic job preparing and managing these games, pushing all the right buttons, being aggressive at the right times. And I really do think that they've been one of the best teams that I saw all season. And it's good to see the rest of the country kind of wake up to that. I feel like it was that Indiana game where people were like, oh, wow, okay, whoa, look at how physical and athletic Notre Dame is. This is a different Notre Dame team than we're used to seeing in the postseason.
Nicole, speaking of coaches, there's a terrific piece that you wrote on NBCSports.com talking about Ryan Day's journey. And I think, a number of weeks ago, everybody was trying to crucify Ryan Day after the loss to Michigan. And it's been such an up and down season for Ohio State. Everybody thought they were the greatest team ever assembled coming into the year. And then the loss at Oregon was like, okay, they're human. And then the loss to Michigan, it was a red alert in Columbus. Now they look like a juggernaut. And Ryan Day is quoted in your article talking about, we didn't plan for things to go this way. So from what you've gleaned from this team, how have they gone through all of those steps and overcome that adversity to get to this point?
Yeah, I was one of the people who was critical of him after Michigan too, because 4 straight losses and this one to a not great Michigan team, it was just hard to imagine how you get through the next 11 months without an opportunity to make up for that. And then, it turns out these playoff games provided that opportunity in the way that they beat Tennessee, then the way that they beat Oregon. I was convinced, but certainly you're like, all right, well, they can't just no show against Texas. They don't do that. The only reason that game wasn't out of hand sooner was because of their own drive killing penalties. And here they are, heavy favorites to win a national championship. So of course, Ryan Day needs to beat Michigan, right? Like that is very important to people. When you have a hated rival, you do need to win that game. But he has done so much to prove that he can win big games. And that was a question that we had all had. It wasn't just Michigan. It was top 5 opponents and some of these really tough losses, including the 1-point loss to Oregon earlier this year. And so I think he proved that he is a different coach than maybe a lot of us thought he was back in November or in the early part of December. And I think just the way that he responded and the way that the team responded, like he deserves a ton of credit from going from such a low to playing the way that they have, to the point where everyone's like, why didn't they do this all year? Like they had slow starts all season. Like it wasn't close to maxing out in the way that we've seen in the postseason. But like this was the team and the expectation we had at the start of the season for them. And I think that's what Ryan Day is saying. Like, we believed that we could play for a national championship. This path to it doesn't look the way that he thought it was going to, and the way that we didn't either. But like, here they are trying to check off the thing that we've been talking about since August as a national championship or bust kind of roster.
Chatting with NBC Sports' lead college football and basketball insider, Nicole Auerbach. And Nicole, just to follow up on that with Ryan Day, like, do you think we've gotten past the point of, okay, he's got, he's got to make a run, or he's got to win a national title? Like, do you think that has settled down here? Whereas win or lose, there's going to be some positivity in Columbus, or they're heavy favorites, right? And so if it doesn't go their way, are we right back to where we started here?
Yeah, I would hope that we're not right back to where we started. I think that there probably is a lot of pressure by being expected to win this game. I thought about that going to the Texas game as well, that there was probably a different kind of pressure here. But I mean, I think he's off the hot seat. Like, this isn't like, at the very least, you're in a neutral mode here because he's proven that they can win big games. And I think it was the preparation, the game plan, the way that he was in the middle of those games. And again, like the response and things like that. Like, you believe he is a different coach than you may have thought he was at the end of the regular season. But yeah, I mean, would there be angst if you had this roster and we saw what it was like, operating at 100%, like when it was firing at all cylinders, and it loses to a team where a lot of people are like, hey, like, their quarterback's a great football player, but is he a great quarterback? Like, they're all beat up and there's so many injuries for Notre Dame. I think that would be tough. I just think it's a job where the expectations are so high, and he knows that, and everybody else knows that around it. So I think like it's difficult to live in when you're not, and like your resume and everything that you've accomplished would thrill every other fan base, so many other fan bases, except just a couple. So yeah, I mean, I do think there would be disappointment, there would be frustration if they don't win a national championship, because so many of us expect them to. But I don't think that there's any question about like his job security or the thing. Like, we learned a lot about him in big games. This would just be disappointing if they were to lose, but I don't think that it is anything like macro about, should he be the head coach of Ohio State? Maybe there would be people who go that way, but to me, these last 3 games have completely changed the way that I view them moving forward together.
Maybe they're out on the fringe, like some of us some talked about. I
don't think that's fringe. I think that you're allowed to, if you're an Ohio State fan, like expect to be able to beat your rival and expect to win Big Ten championships and contend for national championships. But no, I mean, I think we've all learned a lot about Ryan Day over the last 7 weeks, and I don't see that like reverting back to the way that fans felt about him after the Michigan loss.
The standard is the standard at Ohio State and all these blue blood programs. I think that's obvious. The one thing you were hitting on there, Nicole, which I think is fascinating about this national championship game, is 2 quarterbacks, 2 veteran transfer portal quarterbacks who are so similar yet playing such different games right now. I've said I think Will Howard is the best in the college football playoff playing quarterback right now, and Riley Leonard is the engine that is willing Notre Dame forward every single time. You mentioned something good about the injuries. That's not really a good thing. It's pretty bad there for Notre Dame and for Ohio State. Whose injury problems along the offensive line poses a bigger problem in the national championship, in your opinion?
Well, it's Notre Dame because like they're adjusting on the fly now. Ohio State has figured it out. Rhett and I were at the Rose Bowl Media Day, and we talked to Chip Kelly, and he lit up when he was talking about like the combination that they have and the amount of time now that group has had to the end of the regular season to now. And so they feel really good about that. Like, we haven't talked about that as the key matchup really since the first round of the playoff. Like, that was all we talked about, right? It was Tennessee's defensive line and Ohio State's makeshift offensive line. And then it's just not been a factor because Will Howard has been able to get the ball out. He's thrown it. They've run the ball. He's had all the time he's needed in the world. And so it's not an issue. Ohio, Notre Dame, on the other hand, like is in the position now where I apologize for my dog barking if you guys can hear him.
I love dogs on this show. Are you kidding?
But Notre Dame's in the position now where their season-ending injury from the preseason, that player is now back for the offensive line. Like, that's how long the season has been.
Long. Yeah.
And so, I mean, in some ways that helps, right? But they've had injuries dating back to the preseason, and they've had to figure things out. And then on the defensive side, on the defensive line as well. So it feels like it's a Notre Dame issue, and that they've gotten banged up through their playoff run in a way that Ohio State hasn't, where Ohio State, it's not ideal.
So Nicole, this is the fun part about this year's college football playoff, is that we would not be talking about Notre Dame and Ohio State if this was last year. And here we are with the 5 and the 8 seed sitting as the two teams getting ready to battle it out for this national title. So when you look at that part of it, do you feel like that boosts the positivity for the format that we're now sitting here with? And I know there's still people out there who don't like, the 12 initially, but the fact that we actually got some parity outside of, those top 4 teams to see them go into the national title like this, I feel like this is a positive moment for the playoff. How's kind of your ultimate thought on it?
Yeah, I do too. It kind of reminds me of the first year of the 4-team playoff when Ohio State won it all as the 4. Yeah. And it kind of immediately shows you that there's more than, in that case, there were more than 2 teams that each year could win a national championship, might be the best team. And you're worried about, in the BCS era, maybe you're boxing out the best team. Well, it's kind of the same thing now. Well, there's plenty of other reasons that they expanded it. But, like there are teams that had bad losses that would normally have been eliminated and not had a chance to do this. And they had a lot to play for, and they had an opportunity to prove their worth at the end of the season in the playoff. And that's Notre Dame. That's also Ohio State, because again, Northern Illinois would have been a complete eliminator in a different model, and losing a second time and losing to Michigan, not playing in a Big Ten championship game, would have eliminated Ohio State. So I think it shows, yes, there's going to be mulligans for, again, the blue bloods, like that's going to happen, but some of them might actually be the best teams in the country. And maybe they just had, a bad day, or they learned something because they had a transfer quarterback who's still learning the offense, who was injured and missed all of spring ball. And it took a minute. So I do think that it kind of validates the model in the first year. And there's plenty of issues, right? Oregon, raise your hand. Like the seeding was a problem, and that was not something that was fair for the number 1 overall seed, who should have the easiest path on paper. And they didn't right from the jump. So there's definitely things I think that people will tweak and want to fix. I would love to see quarterfinal games on campus. I understand it's hard where it's situated in the calendar, but if you're Kirby Smart and you won the SEC and you didn't even get a home game, and look how awesome it was, and all these other places that got home games, and your fans are going to have to travel 3 times to neutral sites. Like I could see there being a push and complaints and reasons enough for all of these things to get fixed, the little things, but the big things are good. Like the fact that you have 12 teams, the fact that you have a lot of at-large spots, and you still have spots designated for conference champions, so Boise State can get in. All of that is a positive. And I think you're seeing this year why the sport needed it and how exciting it was to have so many different teams in the mix that we were paying attention to all the way down the stretch and all the way through November.
No question. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, and it sounds like, we'll keep talking about potential tweaks and changes as it goes forward here with the CFP. But right now, this worked. Notre Dame and Ohio State sitting here with a chance outside of the top 4 to win a national title is kind of the parity that we were looking for within the 12 teams. And there you have it. Nicole, always a blast to get a chance to talk some ball with you. I'm sure you'll be in Atlanta doing some great work for NBC Sports there. We appreciate you giving us your time. The lead college football and basketball insider for NBC Sports, Nicole Auerbach, everybody. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks for having me.
We're counting down the days, we're counting down the moments, the minutes until we get to crown college football's national champion. And the Big Ten has a great shot to be standing at the top of the mountain for the 2nd straight year. This year, though, with Ohio State hoping to claim the crown. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Believe in Big Ten. Alongside Tom Hannafin from State of State, a Penn State football show. I am Rhett Lewis. Just excited to get this thing going here. We've got a great episode here for you as we preview the national championship game between Notre Dame and Ohio State. We'll have a great chat, Tom, coming up with Nicole Auerbach, who does a phenomenal job as NBC Sports' lead college football and basketball insider. I actually began the college football playoff journey with her in South Bend, watching Notre Dame and Indiana. We were together at the Rose Bowl, watching Ohio State take care of business against Oregon, and I can't wait to see what she's got for us today. And then, of course, once we get to Atlanta and get this college football playoff national championship on the way. So big show indeed, and fired up to get things rolling.
This is Believe in Big Ten, which is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA, college basketball to the NHL and UFC. BetOnline is the number one sports betting source, from touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks. BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. Believe in Big Ten is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. And Rhett, it's the last game of the year. Can't hold anything back now. Let's do this.
It's time. It's time to get it done. And for Ohio State, they have left it all out on the table for these last three games and working for this moment. Same with Notre Dame. You know, two teams outside of the top four and the bye structure here in this new CFP format. And, you know, that's one of the things that I'll talk to Nicole about is, you know, how this will be viewed, you know, seeing these two teams, you know, that were not conference champions, get a chance to play for a national title this year. Whereas, you know, in the 10 years of the 4-team playoff, we wouldn't have seen them, wouldn't have been talking about them at all. They'd have been, you know, weeks into their off seasons at this point. So
shaking their fists at the cloud.
So exactly. If only it was 12. Yeah. But they get that opportunity and they've taken advantage of it. So what we're going to do, as we've been doing throughout the playoff, is paint the picture for you through a star that we think needs to shine, with an X factor, and maybe someone a little bit under the radar that could have a real impact in this game. And then the matchup to watch that ultimately determines the game. We'll make a pick for you as well as it relates to Ohio State and Notre Dame. I'm going to start this thing off here, Tom, with the star, because, you know, I think last week's game in the win for Ohio State over Texas showed us that Will Howard didn't have to be the star, that Jeremiah Smith didn't have to be the star. But to me, I think the defensive ends for Ohio State do have to be stars. JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, who was the hero of that game with the game sealing scoop and score, right? A play that will live on for eternity in terms of Ohio State lore, which is so cool for a guy right there from Pickering, Ohio, who grew up a Buckeye fan. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. So to me, those two guys and really that defensive line in totality has been the story of this college football playoff for me. They have dominated at every turn. They dominated Tennessee. They dominated with Oregon in a way that I don't think we have seen in postseason play from any unit on any team, with those 8 sacks. And then they come back and they kind of do the same and end the game on their terms with Quinn Ewers, having that ball stripped out. So really impressed with what Sawyer, Tuimoloau, what that whole crew has done. But I think those two guys in particular have to be the stars that shine for me. What say you, my friend?
I know this is a Big Ten show, but in order for Notre Dame to have any chance to win this game, the star that has to shine is quarterback Riley Leonard. I know that's kind of a no-brainer, but with your left tackle, Anthony Knapp, having gone out during the Orange Bowl, not going to be able to play in this. You get a starter back from the offseason along that offensive line, which is going to help, but you're adding him in kind of late in this whole process. Riley Leonard has struggled to throw the football, and he had success against Penn State. I think he's going to face the best defense that Notre Dame has faced all season long in Ohio State. Riley Leonard is going to have to get it done with his legs and have to be extremely efficient and safe with the football in the national championship game if Notre Dame has any hope to win this thing. Now, I say all this, I believe Notre Dame can keep this close. I could see this ending as a one-score game. I know the spread, according to our friends at BetOnline and elsewhere, is around -8, depending on where you look. I think Notre Dame can cover that and keep it close, but I also see a world where Ohio State can run away with this thing. There have been blowouts throughout this college football playoff. Wouldn't be shocked if the Buckeyes did the same thing to Notre Dame. The only way that doesn't happen is Riley Leonard has to play maybe the best game of his life.
I feel you on that. And obviously, getting Charles Jagasaw back, who was the guy they was going to start at left tackle before the season, back like that's, he came back in Notre Dame's win in the semi, but wasn't playing left tackle, right? Was playing on the interior. Now you push him back out to left tackle, and we'll see what happens, right? Is it like riding a bike? Is it going to be all there? But again, that goes back to my point with the stars. Like those two guys for Ohio State certainly have to shine. I'm glad you brought that up, though, with Riley Leonard and with the offensive line shuffling around there for Notre Dame in a big spot now on this national stage. Okay, let's move to an X factor for you, Tom Hannafin. What do you got?
I think it's Ohio State safety Caleb Downs. Remember that play that Jack Sawyer had the scoop and score against his old roommate Quinn Ewers ultimately sealed the game for Ohio State. That doesn't happen without an excellent third down play being made by Caleb Downs to really put Texas in that situation on fourth down. Caleb Downs has proved it the entire season. He's arguably the best safety in the country, has that ability to make a difference on special teams. And as we've seen throughout Riley Leonard's year now with Notre Dame, and especially in the semifinal against Penn State, Riley Leonard can throw you one. And Caleb Downs feels like that X factor that he could make things really, really difficult for Riley Leonard. And again, to the points I was just saying, I believe this defense, the secondary as well, is going to challenge Notre Dame's pass catchers more than Penn State's defense did in the Orange Bowl. So I'm looking at Caleb Downs, and I mean, we've talked about transfers a lot this year, and it's just getting the right guys in the right positions. Caleb Downs was kind of a no-brainer, arguably the best defender in the country entering the portal. Ohio State getting the right guys in the right positions who can make the plays when they matter.
Look, I won't argue with that one. I think that's going to be huge. And maybe it's a special teams play too, with him back there returning a punt. For me, I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the ball for an X factor here. And I've talked about Sonny Styles in a couple of different ways over the course of the last few weeks for Ohio State on the second level, because like I said, I've just talked about the defensive line. You just talked about the secondary. We don't talk about those linebackers from Ohio State that much. The second level defenders. Yeah. Sonny Styles is as athletic as any linebacker in the country. Maybe Oregon's Devin Jackson has something to say about it with his 10-6 100-meter dash, but Sonny Styles overall, I mean, this is a guy who's played nickel for Ohio State. This guy who has played some safety for Ohio State, now drops down. I think with Jeremiah Love, playing as well as he has off that knee injury, I was listening to Molly McGrath earlier, who covers the game and covers college football for ESPN, and said that, Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame really feel like Love has turned a corner with that knee injury. Looked pretty dang good, in this last victory over Penn State for Notre Dame. But I think that Sonny Styles' athleticism and finding a way to string out plays and playing sideline to sideline will have a huge impact on whether Notre Dame is actually able to run the ball with confidence and with dominance in this one. So that's where I land for my X factor. How about a matchup for you to watch that could determine this one?
Man, I think Jeremiah Smith is going to have a lot more opportunities against this secondary than he did against the Longhorns secondary. I think Texas presented a very stingy physical defense. I expect something similar from Notre Dame. However, I think that secondary is more susceptible than what Texas put on the field. And you and I talked about it earlier on this week. It wasn't for lack of trying for Ohio State with Jeremiah Smith. 1 catch, yes, but 10 targets. They are still going to try and force feed him the football. Now, there was that one picture of Texas attempting to maybe triple cover Jeremiah Smith. Well, great. If you do that, there's a bunch of other people who can really kill you in the passing game. Penn State was never able to get out of the blocks when it came to passing the football. I think it's going to be a very different story with Ohio State. And I think Ohio State learned the lesson from the Michigan game is that you don't have to be a run-first, punch you in the mouth style of offense. Feed your stars. And they've got 5 or 6 outside of Will Howard alone that can get it done. So I think Jeremiah Smith's numbers go up against the Irish.
I think the matchup to watch for me here quickly is Ohio State's offensive line and whether they can continue playing so well as a unit together after shuffling around a number of positions to account for injuries throughout the season. And they've really come together. And I think if they continue that play, you give Will Howard just enough time to let his receivers create some space versus this man coverage heavy defense of Notre Dame, they will win. Jeremiah Smith will win. Carnell Tate will win. Emeka Buka will win. Maybe even G. Scott will win. Like they will find winners one-on-one versus this Notre Dame defense if that's the way the Irish want to play them. And so then it'll be, all right, can this Ohio State offensive line find a way to limit Howard Cross, find a way to limit the number of different guys that could rotate through for Notre Dame and wreak havoc on Will Howard, disrupt his timing and his anticipation. That's what it comes down to for me in this one, in terms of matchups that really intrigue me. So a lot to look forward to. Man, great to get a chance to chat with Nicole. She has some great insight for us. And that is going to do it, though, for this episode of Believe in Big Ten. A lot more on the way as we get closer to the national title game. We'll be right back here with you following the national championship. And we'll hopefully be talking about a Big Ten team sitting here getting crowned champion for the second straight year. So for Tom Hannafin, I am Rhett Lewis. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll catch you next time.
Enjoy the game.